On 3, it is the end of the road for the college basketball season. Florida and Houston facing off in San Antonio tonight. Going to be spectacular. This is not the matchup we thought we were going to get, Ari, but that Houston last 2 minutes, the Duke meltdown. Do you want to do the talk radio thing? Was it a great comeback or was it a choke?
I think, it's okay for it to be both, right?
I think it was both. Yeah.
Yeah. Cause I think a lot of people are trying to pin that whole thing on, Cooper Flag foul and whether or not you thought that was a foul. And I was just like, there was a lot that happened there that wasn't just a foul. I mean, like there was...
I had a Duke fan texting me and I said, I didn't think it was a foul. And they were like, yeah, it doesn't matter. Like it shouldn't have come down to that.
Yeah. Right. There were some threes and free throws and turnovers and all the things that, I think it's like if blowing a game like that is a stew, I think that they brought all the ingredients from Durham Farmers Market. Like, I don't know. Like, and I don't even know if that's actually a foul or not. Like, is that actually a bad call?
Like, that was a bad call. It was a bad call. There were some bad calls in the final 4 games. Like there were a few not great calls. So but that's going to happen. And you have to be able to play through that. Like it should not have been at a point where if Duke got called for a ticky-tack foul, Houston could take the lead with 2 free throws. Like Duke put themselves in that position you could make that a recruiting argument where you say, hey, you decided not to have a true point guard. Like you decided when you built this team not to have a true point guard. So that's going to cause you problems when an athletic, good defensive team is pressing you.
Yeah, and I think also part of it too is that when you're up by 6 with a minute and a half left or whatever, there's kind of a we're moving on feeling. And like that you can't do that. Like, I don't know. Didn't it kind of feel like they felt like they won? And at that point, like Houston never believed that the game was over. They kept pushing. And then all of a sudden they make 2 big plays and it's very much in question. And then Duke like has a hard time snapping back into, oh my God, we could lose this game mode. And it's like, I feel like if you're in a position like that, you got to do everything that you can in your power to maintain 100% intensity and, thought process that you have not won the game yet, even when you're up by X number of points with only a few minutes left.
Well, and it kind of is a young team, old team situation too, I think. The Houston guys, like Juwan Roberts has been at Houston for 6 years now. Like he's seen everything. He's not going to care if they're down 9 with 2 minutes to go. Like that doesn't bother him. He's been in that situation before. He understands how these games work, how they go. And I think it's one of those things where if you've got a bunch of younger players and things start to tighten up like that, they go, oh God, what do we do now? And the Houston guys, they already know what to do. Like they have no questions about like LJ Cryer, again, has seen all these situations before. And I talked about this. If you want to see my preview video for the national title game, it's on the On3 Sports YouTube channel. But I talked about LJ Cryer has played in a national title game before. Like he's already dealt with all of these things. So when he gets in a situation like that, it doesn't bother him.
Yeah. As we talked about the like first round draft pick situation versus like veteran players who are also going to play in the NBA. And like, I think that like there's a certain level of how much you want to, build your team with young talent. And it's just like, I know that Duke had big guys who are going to be in a position to compete at a high level in the NBA for a long time. But it did kind of feel like the experience that Houston had on the team, plus their insane talent, was the right combination to not give up in that moment. Like, I still think that Duke is a better basketball team than them. I think that Duke is the best team I've ever seen. They were winning that game easily, or not, I don't want to say easily, but they were firmly in control of that game for 90% of it. And they took their foot off the gas, and a veteran team that knew how to make plays and never gave up won the game. Like, I think that's what happened. Like, I don't know. That's
exactly what happened.
Yeah. So,
and as you go into this Florida game, you wonder, could the same thing happen? But Florida's a lot older. Florida's got guys who've been through some stuff too. And I don't know that Florida, which by the way, had this situation, had to do its own comeback in the Sweet 16. I don't know that they are going to have as many issues as that. Oh, excuse me, the Elite Eight. It was the Texas Tech game that Florida had to come back. But I think that's going to make for a really great game tonight. And I think It's not sexy, but the winner of this game will be the team that gets more offensive rebounds and second chance points, because that's what Houston did to Duke. And Duke was a decently good rebounding team, but Houston crushed them on the boards. You think about this. You got a 7-2 center who's going to be a lottery pick who had 0 rebounds. That's what Houston does to you.
Yeah. Andy, what's going on in Gainesville tonight? What are we doing? Like, what's going on?
The whole town, I think, went to San Antonio. Like,
it's empty. You can actually go to the kids' place around the corner and not have to wait for an hour.
Yeah, taking the kids to school today was very easy. There was very little traffic. So I wonder how many people were like, hey, let's go to San Antonio. I can tell you, and River, grab that Game Time footage, because you can get tickets tonight, pretty good seats on Game Time for the national championship game, about $176. If you use that GT Picks feature, it'll show you the best deals relative to the market. And there are some pretty good vantage points that you can get for $176. I was going through the list, and that was the kind of lowest price if you want to be along the side. And that's a pretty good deal for a national championship game. So it may be that everybody in Gainesville hopped on Game Time and then hopped over to San Antonio. So we shall see. But if you want to use Game Time, and look, maybe you're not going to the game tonight, but maybe you want to go see, I don't know, Jelly Roll in concert, because that was one of the first things that popped up when I hit the Game Time app today, because he's on tour right now. But you want to see him in concert, go to the Game Time app, use the code STAPLES, and you get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, of course, but $20 off your first purchase when you use Game Time. Use the code STAPLES. All right, Ari, let us talk about the game. Florida's a 1.5-point favorite. The total on this game is pretty low, 141.5. That's about the final score of the Houston-Duke game. That's about where that game landed. Mm-hmm. That's a game that Houston, I think, may win. Like, if it's 141.5 for a total, I think Houston's got confetti raining on it. If it goes higher than that, I think Florida does.
Yeah, Andy, we watched the Florida-Auburn game together, okay? And I was kind of blown away by how many possessions it felt like Florida gave away. And then it looked like, or it felt like to me, that Florida was losing that game pretty considerably. And then you look down at the scoreboard and they're winning. Like, I don't know what that means in the grand scheme of things. I think Houston's going to play defense that good, and they'll be up in their faces and stuff. But I feel like if Florida, who played really hard against Auburn and, got where it needed to go, can just take care of the ball. Like, I feel like Auburn got every break as it pertained to like possession situations. Did you feel that way watching that? Or is it just,
I don't know that Auburn got every break. I mean, there was a bad call, the Thomas Houck, which was clearly a clean block, and they called it a foul, but I don't know that Auburn got a lot of breaks. I thought what happened is, and I'm interested to see how they call this particular game today, because Auburn was slapping at the ball, and that's what they do defensively. And they were causing a lot of havoc with the Gators. Florida, they made Florida look very sloppy.
Yeah.
And I think Houston will try to do the same thing. And so if the refs let them play, Florida may have some turnovers that they got to deal with. So Florida's going to have to take care of the ball. I think they're going to push the tempo, which that's one thing they've done to teams, is Florida tends to wear you out pushing that tempo. But it's interesting because Florida can go 10 deep, but they only went 8 deep the other night against Auburn. So I don't think they're necessarily going to try to just wear Houston out. I think they're going to try to have a lot of possessions in this game, because they know that Houston's going to defend them well, and they're going to have to. They just may not be super efficient offensively because of Houston.
Yeah, well, I think too that like every 50-50 ball that felt like Auburn was getting, it's not just something that comes in the form of turnovers or ref decisions. If there's a ball that's out there and people are slapping at it, I felt like Auburn did a very good job of getting it. And like the bottom line is that Walter Clayton Jr. played like Michael Jordan. Like, I mean, I don't know if there's any other way to put it. Like the guy,
he was awesome
everywhere, and he scored 35 points, which is a heck of a lot in college. And he did it in a variety of different ways. Beautiful moves to the basket. 5 for 8 from 3. The question that I have is whether or not Florida needs another heroic performance from this guy in order to put itself in a position to win the game. Or if that was just like the cherry on top, because without a Superman performance from him, Florida definitely would have lost to Auburn.
Yes, definitely. They needed that. and Houston needs same from LJ Cryer. That's what Houston has gotten from LJ Cryer the last 2 games. If they get it again, they got a real good chance of winning tonight. If they don't get that from LJ Cryer, because he was the only one making shots consistently against Duke. If they don't get that from him, it's going to be a struggle for Houston. But it's the same thing. Like, what can Houston do in terms of defending Walter Clayton Jr.? The guy for Florida who I think is the key to everything is Ruben Chinaloo, which that's not a guy you'd normally say that about because he's kind of the dirty work guy. But he needs to match Houston's energy on the boards for Florida to have a chance to win this game. Because if he can do that, then I think there's a really good chance that Florida keeps some possessions alive, has some second chance points. These are both good offensive rebounding teams. And Ruben Chinaloo made one of the biggest plays of the Auburn game with an offensive rebound off a missed free throw.
Yeah, that was a really nasty rebound too.
Yeah, so that's the thing. Like, him and Juwan Roberts and JoJo Hugler for Houston, like, who's going to do the dirty work the best in this game? Because whoever does is going to win.
And Alex Condon needs to toughen it up a little bit, even if it means throwing a bow in there to assert yourself. I thought that
Chinaloo got a flagrant for throwing a bow in the Auburn game. So
I mean, like, it's crazy. Like, nobody on Florida, grabbed 10 rebounds in the Auburn game. Which, when you have that many tall players, it's pretty tough stat, like you said. So, I don't know. So, where are you leaning on this?
I'm still going with Florida because I just think they have more weapons, but I'm not sure. Like, I was sure of it with Duke and Houston. Duke's got too many weapons, but Houston has made a believer out of me in terms of they're going to be in this. Like, this is not going to be a blowout. I don't know who's going to win. This is not going to be a blowout. And I think Houston is so good defensively that whether you want to play a high tempo or not, they're gonna make you struggle. So I still think Florida has the weapons, and I think the difference between Florida and Duke is Florida's old enough and experienced enough to not melt down in that situation, whereas we didn't know what the freshmen were going to do, and you saw what happened.
And Florida's already shown in the tournament that they could be against the ropes or in what seems to be a certain, like, they're losing certainly, and they didn't. And part of that too was, Walter Clayton Jr. being a hero again. But, that to me is huge. But when you look at just everything that Houston has too, like, this is a very, very good, deep, old, disciplined team, and it should be a hell of a game. I had 2 semi-football related thoughts for you that I wanted to, break down.
Before that, I need your pick in this game.
I'm probably just going to go with Houston because they beat Duke. Like, I mean, they literally beat Duke.
It's not a bad way to pick this game. It's really not.
Good analysis. Like, I didn't think anybody was beating Duke. I paid the consequences for that, both publicly in terms of the things that I said, and then personally with how much money's coming out of my bank account as a result of it. But, like, I was driving back from the Final Four on Saturday night, and there was some traffic, and it was kind of rainy. But I was, like, looking down at the score for most of the game, and Duke was in firm control. And then I, like, was getting a bunch of texts like, okay, turn it on. And I was turning it on, and I just watched the end of that. And it was just like, oh my God, I cannot believe this. But no, I'm going to take Houston. Maybe just in basketball more than, I don't know. Maybe we're finding out in football too, that, like, talent that is maybe not quite top end in terms of, like, first round draft pick, but talent that's really, really good college level player who is in their 3rd and 4th, 5th years is every bit as important as the young, dynamic freak that's going to be gone in 3. I don't know, or maybe it's overcorrection of.
Well, I think if you wanted to make the football, like, Ohio State had both of those things in football last year. Yeah. And I don't know that there are going to be a lot of teams that are able to combine both like that in any of these sports. But I think that's exactly right. And I think it's more important in basketball because if you can make those superstars have a bad night, if you can make them melt down, then you can win anything. And I think a lot of the credit for that goes to Kelvin Sampson, who has done an incredible job finding players who fit his system and in this era. And so actually, Ari, that brings up a guest. So we were in San Antonio on Saturday. We did a live show with Whataburger. It was awesome. So much fun. We got very full. But one of my favorite people we talked to on that show was Landon Goesling, who's from the Lincoln Cougs Collective, and Link U is the platform that they built for multiple schools. But this is a group of Houston alums. Landon played basketball at Houston. He was on Kelvin Sampson's team at one point. He was a GA for Kelvin Sampson as well. And we were talking to him, and my thought was, oh, this is a great interview, but Duke's going to beat them, and we're not going to really get to talk about this much anymore. But I'm glad we get to talk about it, because Landon explains in this interview how Kelvin Sampson finds guys that even in this era can take the old school coaching, can take the hard coaching, can deal with the kind of work and the selflessness that's required to play in this team environment.
Yeah, it's really cool to actually talk to somebody who's like involved with the money aspect of this. And, I thought that he was pretty upfront with, how things are going, and he was having a hell of a time. I can't imagine what it would be like if you were a part of that and then your team was in the Final Four. And then now I can't imagine how he's feeling, but it was definitely cool to see him. I think he has amazing hair. I kind of gave him some stuff. But he
said he used to cut it like this. He used to buzz it and then just let it grow out one day. And it's like, oh, I got that's how he winds up on The Bachelor.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been a blessed life for our guy Landon. But
yeah, it'd be like if I buzzed my hair, like it's just an insult. But yeah, and then when we come back from this interview, I want to talk about 2 basketball things before we go to the next segment, because I want to know. Go to the video, and then we'll talk about those things when we get back.
All right. Now by Landon Goesling of the Link U Collective. What you guys have helped Houston to get here, and I got to ask, you're a former Houston basketball player. You actually were a grad assistant for Kelvin Sampson. What has it been like watching this program become what it is now?
Man, it's been unbelievable. It's been special. I think I was, talking to a bunch of folks in the lobby earlier today. It's like, this is what those June 1st workouts, everybody's heard about it, right? June 1st and a Kelvin Sampson workout. It's military style. Everyone's throwing up. Everyone's calling mom, like, why am I here? And from day one, when you go down and break the huddle, it's Final Four on 3. Like, that's the goal. That's the standard in that program. And I think we've been so close, the last couple of years. So to finally get here, it's a sense of accomplishment, but it's like, we belong here and we're not finished, right? We're trying to be here until Monday night.
The thing that I think is interesting is like when you're, we're going to get back to the basketball questions. I can't do this right now because I'm supposed to have the best hair on this podcast. What's going on with it? What a flow. I can't take my eyes off of it.
Funny story about that is I shaved my head for like all the way up until my sophomore year in college. And then one day my buddy and my mom, they're sitting there talking. They're like, why don't you try to grow your hair out, right? And so I started growing it out, realized I had a little bit of curls, which is not in the family. So I've stuck with it ever since, and it's worked.
Yeah, I mean, it's working really well, man. You're a handsome man.
And that's how you wind up on The Bachelor.
yeah, definitely how I ended up on The Bachelor. Short-lived, but a great experience, and I'll save those stories for later.
Yeah, Katie Thurston's just not smart if she let you go, pal. Hey, I got a question.
Listen, Landon did fine for himself.
Yeah,
it all worked out.
All right, yeah. That's why I said she's dumb.
Right. My lovely wife over there, Kate, so it all worked out.
So the question I do have, though, is like I don't think people realize or appreciate how much work goes in behind the scenes in assembling a roster, both making numbers work, picking the right people, the deployment of funds in the correct way and stuff. Can you take us into what it's like to be on that side of it, and how difficult is it to, even if you have the money, to use it correctly to get to build a team that's good enough to get here?
What's crazy about that is we're in such a unique position at the University of Houston with Coach Sampson, right? He's an old school coach that, this program is all about culture. And the kids that come here, he always says it, if you don't want problems, don't recruit them, right? It sounds so simple, but he's done a tremendous job. And so the kids that come through this program, they want to get better. They want to get to the next level. And I think Milo Suzanne's a perfect example, right? Came from Oklahoma in the last, 3 or 4 months. He's played himself into a really, really good spot, right? And so that whole process starts super early, right? But I think it all goes back to the trust factor, playing for Coach Sampson, being a grad assistant. Coach has a small circle, and that trust factor is there. And again, we get kids that come to the University of Houston that want to be there, that want to develop as young men, as young leaders in the community, and on the basketball court, obviously.
Well, but how do they find guys like that? Because you hear coaches complaining that in the NIL era, that's very hard to do. But you watch Houston play, and you just talk about the workouts that people have to go through, and Kelvin Sampson hasn't changed. Yep. So how do you find that type of person? And
not necessarily that you recruit out of high school, but like an LJ Cryer who watched play at Baylor for 3 years?
I think the answer to that is, and I won't get into too much of the secret sauce, but it's doing due diligence and homework. And again, I've been on both sides now, right, as a graduate assistant in kind of behind the scenes. And this is a true story. In the office with Coach one day, recruiting a kid, and he calls these schools and asks to speak to the lunch lady. This is a true story, right? What is this kid like? How are his manners like? So that's how far Coach goes into this process and how much in depth he looks for these kids and goes through the whole vetting process. And I don't know how he does it, but again, there's a secret sauce. But that's just a story that just still blows my mind to this day.
And the lunch lady might not have some nice things to say about me because I want my stuff gotten ready. But hey, that's really cool. For you though, personally, like you said, sense of accomplishment. Do you feel really good right now about what you guys are doing and yourself and how you did this?
I feel amazing. They hang banners for Final Four. Again, our work is not complete, but I think, a couple of things that are different about this team is, one, we're healthy, right? Like the last several years, we've been down to at least one starter, sometimes multiple starters, and then we're just balanced, right? We have multiple guys that can go out and get it on a night-to-night basis. We're not so dependent on one player. I think we've always been there defensively, one of the best teams in the country, but offensively this year, we're the second, third best three-point shooting team in the country. So they're flowing, they're playing their best basketball in March. And as Coach Sampson says, now we're 40 minutes away from being 40 minutes away.
So how has this process evolved? And obviously, we're sitting here Saturday. Monday is going to be a very different day for you guys in the collective world. How much has the world changed between 2021 and now?
It's unbelievable. It's already starting, right? We're in the Final Four, but we're already dealing with everything, right? Roster retention, what's everything going to look like? And I'm heavily involved in that process the last 48 hours, right? And it's the way college athletics has shifted, and it's changed a lot just since I got in the NIL space when it first started, right? And I think, again, it goes back to having a special culture and a special program and having a special leader in Coach Sampson.
Let me ask you this. This is all changing still, right? Like there's some pretty big changes in terms of how players are going to be compensated right around the corner here. How do you think that's going to impact you and what you guys are doing?
I think for us, it's a day-to-day, sometimes hour-to-hour process, right? And I think we positioned ourselves, we said it from day one, to do NIL the right way. And I think if it's done the right way, there's so many good things that can come out of it. But we have to be quick on our toes, and things change, like I said, by the hour. So we positioned ourselves to be able to do that, but always lean and know that we're doing it the right way. We're developing young men, and we always say our biggest goal is to bridge the gap for when these guys are done playing and they enter the real world. And it gives them, that's probably my biggest joy to this point, is seeing the growth in these young men the last 2 years. The first time we go do an NIL experience, 2 or 3 years ago, everybody's on their phone, and then to see the growth, and now everyone's phone's in their pocket. It's a race to go talk to the business owner. It's a race to go talk to the supporters, right? How's your wife? How's your family? That goes so far with these guys. So to see their growth has been unbelievable.
How do you handle the push and pull? Like your partner Austin is a former football player. Yep. You've obviously got to help Coach Fritz and his team too. How does that work? How do the conversations go between you guys and Coach Sampson and Coach Fritz and your AD?
I think it all goes back again to the culture, and I think the number one thing is Coach Sampson has been such an advocate for Coach Fritz and his program, because Coach Fritz he's very similar to Coach Sampson. He's all ball coach. He's going to teach the right things, develop young men, and be all about culture, right? And so we know as a university, to take the next step, we've got to get our football program there, and Coach Sampson's been the number one advocate for that. So they say I can't remember what the phrase is, but all our raising tides lift all boats, somewhere along those lines. But I know that Coach Sampson's been so heavy on pushing Coach Fritz and the culture, and again, support from the football standpoint, because at the university, that's how we take the next step.
Thank you for the perfect segue, because I'm foaming at the mouth to talk about football a little bit. So I do think it's interesting when you say, the rising tide lifts all boats and stuff. How much does basketball and being on TV, being in the Final Four help football? And then the other part to this too is, Andy and I talk about this all the time as it pertains to the Big 12. It feels like it's like a wide open race on which team now is going to take that conference over, be the next. And it seems on paper, if you were just like starting at year zero right now, that Houston would have all the things that you would want, especially being located in one of the most densely populated cities in the country for high school football talent. What do you think the ceiling is for that football program, and how does this help that ceiling?
Well, I think the ceiling goes back to Coach Fritz's history. He's won everywhere he's been, right? And in football, you're dealing with 100 kids opposed to 15, and I think as you guys can see, the recruits that we're getting, the kids we have coming in, they talk about it all the time. We got to win the grassroots first, right? So we have to win and recruit our backyard and win in the city of Houston and the state of Texas before we go elsewhere. And so I think it's starting to trend in the right direction. I'm really excited about this football season with Coach Fritz at the helm, and Coach Sampson right there backing him. And also, Eddie, our AD, Eddie Nunez has been absolutely tremendous in this process and has been very at the forefront of NIL, and kind of a call to action of, hey, we need you guys to step up in a big way. To your point, we're playing in the Big 12 that we believe is, the best conference in college athletics, and we can go out and compete for championships in both football and in basketball.
So here's my question. Obviously, you don't want to get ahead of yourself, but if you win tonight and Florida wins tonight, your AD is an ex-Florida basketball player. How's he going to handle that?
He's going to be wearing red, and he's going to be saying "Go Cougs." I actually had a conversation with him about that, so that's funny. But he's all in from day one. He's been all in, leaning on the people that have been there, but also speaking up, being at the forefront, and getting engaged in the community. I think has been very important. And so we had some great people that laid the foundation. But I think we're taking the next step here, and putting Houston on this national stage is just unbelievable for the university and for the city of Houston.
Landon, we got a little something for you.
Oh, look at
we got these custom Whataburger basketballs. That is for you to take home.
And you put that right in the foyer of your house. It's the first thing that anybody looks at when they come into your place. Look at that thing.
My front room, I have a big office with all my jerseys from my former players and basketballs. So this is going to fit right in, man. This is awesome. Shout out to Whataburger, man. My wife was over there eating about three burgers. She's going to get mad at me for saying that, but we love Whataburger.
Well, awesome. Well, hopefully, maybe it'll be a commemorative of a national championship run. Who knows?
Let's do it. Let's do it. We're 40 minutes away from being 40 minutes away.
Yeah. Well, the thing that I think you're in a good position is you want this moment to last forever because it's great. You get the second game. You can watch the first game as a little bit of an appetizer, and then you can enjoy the evening. When we shut these cameras off, just get me what your hair product guy is, and we'll be in good shape. But thank you.
As soon as the camera's off, I'll give you the insight.
Yeah, all right. Thank you so much for being here, man. Really appreciate you.
That's Landon Goesling from Linking Cougs and the Link U. So they part of the collective that is bankrolling Houston basketball and Houston football. And Ari, you had some thoughts that combine the worlds of basketball and football.
Yeah. So one, I don't know how far back you want to go, but in terms, and I know Florida isn't the banner of success right now in football, but Florida, the best athletic department in the Rev sports in the country now. Is that a fair thing to say? Or when you look at the combined,
not until they show something in football.
Yeah, I guess it just goes back to how far you want to go, right? Because it's
Michigan's up there.
Yeah,
their basketball team's pretty good.
Yeah. This is like a conversation, and it's something that I think about every time something like this happens when a football school gets to this point. Because ever since what year was it when Ohio State and Florida played both times? 06, right?
Well, it was the 06 football season, the 06-07 basketball season when they met for the championship in basketball.
Yeah.
Alabama is on that list right now.
Yeah,
Tennessee is on that list right now. But I would argue Florida's been a better basketball school since 2008 than it has a football school, because they had an Elite Eight appearance. They've had 2 Final Four appearances since then. So I think that's the difference is Florida's been pretty good at basketball. They had a little bit of a lull, but they've been consistently good.
And then the follow-up question to that is, even if it's not Florida, it's somebody else. Can a school change what type of school it is? I was eating lunch with somebody who went to IU yesterday, Indiana.
I figured this is where this is going.
And I don't know if it's possible, but he said, yeah, well, we're a football school now, funny enough. And it's like, I don't know if he was just joking in the sense of we're not doing really well in basketball right now, and there's a coaching situation and all that, but can a school change what it is? Or does it happen?
I think if you're already a football school, you're always a football school.
Okay.
You can be good at basketball. You can win national championships in basketball, because being good at basketball doesn't cost nearly what it costs to be good at football. So if you're good at football, or you're a football school, which means you're rich, because you got to have a lot of money to be a school that really cares about football, you can put the money toward basketball to be good at basketball.
Do you think you could ever rewire fans' brains to prioritize one over the other based on continued?
Yes. I'm telling you right now, if Kentucky competed for the SEC, started suddenly competing for the SEC title in football every year, Kentucky would be a football school.
It's a football podcast, so we're going to be football snobs, but do you think it ever could go the other way? where it's football to basketball?
I guess you had a really good football program and you just haven't been good for decades. That's pretty much the only way.
Yeah, I'm trying to think like if Nebraska got really, really good at basketball. Like
no, not a chance.
Yeah,
like,
okay. So like no matter what, like Florida, like if Florida won 4 out of the next 8 national titles and went to the Final Four 5 times in 8 years, do you think that in year 9 they would care more about basketball?
The lead conversation on every Barstool would still be about how's the football team doing.
Yeah. Because it's like if Indiana gets good at football, I really do believe that Indiana could rewire its brain collectively as a fan base.
I think football just takes over everything. Football is all encompassing. Yeah. It is so just think about how many people are in the stadium on game day. Like it's just a bigger event. It's a bigger sport. And I think that's why. So if you get good at football, you can't escape it once you're good at football. Like it is everywhere you go, especially in these little university towns.
And do you think that even at basketball schools like North Carolina or even Duke, and maybe those are like the biggest, most basketball through and through schools in the country?
Yeah.
If you asked their fans in an honest moment, would you rather be in a college football playoff run or a run to the Final Four? Do you think they would pick football because that's more of a longer, sustained feeling? Like Indiana's feeling of like making a run last year was 2.5 months, whereas in the NCAA tournament, that's a 3-week fleeting feeling. Like that, it's like more, it's a slower burn in football.
It is, and it feels like it lasts the whole year,
right.
And really, it does, because what Indiana did last year in football, we will talk about all off season, and they can turn into a pumpkin again, but they'll have had a year of that. So I don't think they're going to turn into a pumpkin again, by the way.
NCAA
I'm very excited about Fernando Mendoza. We'll talk about all that stuff in the offseason.
Yeah,
but
I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but is an NCAA tournament run fleeting?
Well, because you can get hot. Now, here's the thing. Like, this is not a case of Florida just getting hot. They were really good all season. Obviously, Houston's been good for years. Like, Houston's been great for years. And so you can have a good run, or you can have a one particular great player or set of player. Like Florida's 2 national championships in basketball are because they had one of the greatest recruiting classes of all time that when it got signed, nobody knew was one of the greatest recruiting classes of all time because none of those guys were particularly highly ranked. Corey Brewer was the highest ranked of the bunch. And it's like, oh, they took Tito Horford's kid and Yannick Noah's kid. Like, okay, whatever. And then you saw them play together. Like, oh my God, these guys are awesome.
Yeah.
But a lot of that was because of one great recruiting class.
Yeah.
Like you can't do that in football. It doesn't work that way. And you could you could conceivably go back. Now, Billy Donovan, of course, is a Hall of Fame coach. So Florida stayed good after that. But you could have had a situation like that in basketball where that happened and then you just sort of fell off again.
I mean, I guess the Florida thing was a stupid question because I have like personal experience with this. Like I covered football and basketball at the same time for 4 or 5 years.
Arizona.
At Ohio State.
Oh, at Ohio State, yeah.
Basketball beat writer, believe it or not. And there was, I'll never forget this, but Ohio State made it to the Final Four one year. I can't remember what year it was now because I'm not much for memory and recalling things, as you know. But it was.
If only we had a way to look things up, like the entire compendium of human knowledge on a machine that fits in our pocket.
Yeah, I know, but you'd have to do that in advance, and I didn't know I was going to say this. That's the beauty of the show. Like we are talking, it's conversational. I don't have my talking points planned out before we sit down. I just am talking to my buddy.
That's why when I talk, you look up. That's how it works.
Yeah, but I remember it wasn't a Final Four run year, but I think it was 2012 when they had John Diebler and David Lighty and all those guys who lost to Kentucky in the Sweet 16. And I remember I wrote like a big feature about David Lighty or John Diebler, who's now the head coach, funny enough, or John Diebler's brother's the head coach, funny enough. But I spent months reporting this big feature on basketball, right? Talking to people back home. I went back to the hometown. You know, I wanted to unveil this in the NCAA tournament. And I think like in the Sweet 16, you know how the old newspaper thought was report a big feature, have it filed, and then we're going to run it the day of the event.
The day of the big game. Exactly.
Yeah, right. So I did that. And, you know, that was like right at the beginning of like online numbers. But as you know, the NCAA tournament at times, especially deep runs, coincide with spring football. And Ohio State's backup left guard, I think, either tore his ACL or hurt his leg. It wasn't even a starter. And
Right.
I wrote a 300-word newser of like, this is what happened at spring football today. And that got 10 times more views than the feature I spent 2 months reporting. And from that point on, I was just like, I'm done with it. Like, not done. It was my job, but like, it was like, where your bread is buttered. And like, that's where you need to focus your attention because that's what people care about.
I'm glad you said that because right now we're going to talk about Florida some more, but not the basketball team. We're going to talk about a guy who's from the Metro Houston area. Well, kind of outside, a little outside Metro Houston, but close. Who happens to play for Florida. He's a quarterback. You might have heard of him, DJ Lagway. We ran into our friend Chris Doering from the SEC Network, all-time great Florida wide receiver. And he, of course, was there to enjoy the basketball game, but he's about to get, full on into spring football, talking SEC football. They've got shows planned for later in the week at the SEC Network. So he's been doing his homework. And of course, he's in Gainesville. He's watching things. He's hearing all the same things, everybody talking about DJ Lagway's shoulder. What's going to happen now? So we grabbed Chris and said, sit down, have some Whataburger, bring home the W with Whataburger. By the way, before we get to Chris, double points still tonight if you order Whataburger. So you can order those Whata Wings. Like I beat Artie in a Whata Wings eating contest. Just demolished some Whata Wings. The mushroom Swiss burger. Oh my God, it is so good. We had James Sanchez, their executive chef, explaining how he created the mushroom Swiss burger and then made it scalable on a massive scale. It was awesome. So order your Whataburger tonight for the national championship game. Double points when you order tonight at Whataburger. So we saw Chris. We said, hey, come have some Whataburger samples. And we got to talk some spring football. We got to talk some DJ Lagway. And that's exactly what we did. Here is Chris Doering.
We came to San Antonio, but listen, we got to talk some football when Chris Doering walks by. The greatest walk-on wide receiver in the history of the SEC. He held the SEC touchdowns record until some guy named Devontae Smith broke it. How we doing, Chris?
25 years, man. I mean, I feel like that's a backhanded compliment to the greatest walk-on wide receiver, although I take great pride in that, man. And, as a walk-on, what you got to go through. So
the difference between you as a walk-on and me as a walk-on, quite vast.
It worked out all right for you, bro. You're doing a good job yourself, bro.
I got to say, I think I would take your game over Devontae Smith, so anyway.
I don't know about that, dude. I love that guy, man. To have your record broken, it's kind of it's a weird feeling, but by somebody that was that talented and that good of a guy and that good of a leader, man, it was an honor to kind of follow that chase for a while.
And I'll say this. To have your record broken by a person who won the Heisman Trophy puts into perspective what you did and what you accomplished, so congratulations on that.
Oh, I appreciate it, man. It was such a fun time because you think about, I was one of you start my career with Willie Jackson, Jack Jackson, Harrison Houston, on to Ike Hilliard and Riddell Anthony, Jacquez Green, Travis McGriff. We had such a good group of wide receivers at that time. To think about what we were all able to do together is pretty impressive.
So let's talk a little spring football because that's going on right now. They're finishing up spring practice in Gainesville. There's spring games coming up. Where are you in terms of concern about DJ Lagway resting the shoulder all spring?
I'm not concerned about that at all. Whatever the procedure was or whatever happened in the offseason, I think they're doing a good job of managing him. I was at practice, got a chance to watch how involved he was, even when he's not getting reps. So this is a guy, the thing I think I like the most about him, Andy, is like what he does to elevate the play of the people around him and maybe more so holding them accountable. I'm not going to lie. There were a lot of guys that weren't as disciplined and committed to winning football games in the last couple of years. And I think the accountability that DJ's brought to that team is helping raise the level of expectation for everybody.
Is it a matter of guys just don't want to mess up when there's this potentially special QB here?
Man, I think I look at it's like the Pied Piper effect. Everybody wants to be a part of the DJ Lagway experience. So the portal, they killed it in the portal. The retention of the roster. And again, it's like, hey, we got a chance to be special. That last month of the season, I think was a great prelude for what can happen this year. Now, I'm not convinced that everything that ailed them last year is fixed, but I'm optimistic that they can build on that finish.
Well, we have to acknowledge, and it's good that to get a different perspective on DJ, because whenever we have a podcast mailbag episode, or even today when people are asking questions, it's Florida fans freaking out. Like, what does it mean that DJ's not practicing? It's a pivotal spring for him. If you could offer a word of encouragement, maybe outside of what you just said, to Florida fans specifically about where he is and where the team is, what would you tell them?
I think spring practice is very different for different players, where you are in the development of your career. The experience that he got last year was, you can't, it's invaluable. Now, I don't think anybody will ever acknowledge what Graham Mertz did for this program, and specifically from DJ Lagway, but the mentorship that he provided, he doesn't need to go through the spring practice like he was taking over as the first-year starter. This guy got great experience last year, and those two dudes collaboratively in terms of helping him become a pro, I don't think people will ever talk enough about what Graham did for DJ.
So in terms of what this team can do, Ari and I have talked about it. It feels like the lowest floor and highest ceiling team in college football, because, like we were talking about the other day, if they could make a playoff, if they could win 10 games against that schedule, that means they're a national title contender. But they could also potentially be 6-6 again, or 7-5 again.
I think you look at the Vegas over/under on wins. I think 6.5. Last year was like 4.5, which I thought was a little low. And in the start of the season, after Miami and Texas A&M, it didn't look like they were going to get to 3 wins, let alone 7 or 8. But I look at this year. It's such an undetermined schedule. It's really challenging again. You got to go to Miami this year instead of getting them at home. But I think every year is different, and in the SEC, especially now with the transfer portal and how different teams can be from year to year, I think it's very difficult to gauge.
The thing that I always wonder about Florida this offseason, I know that there's a lot put into it. I'm very high. I've drank a gallon of the DJ Lagway Kool-Aid. Like, I've talked about him as being maybe the best player in college football next year. Are the receivers good enough, coming in from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody's excited about what they did, both in the recruiting class that they signed this year and in the portal. Studevant is somebody, got everybody kind of buzzing there. But, I go back to last year. The improvement was offensively in a little bit, but it was more about the defense's improvement. The defense was miserable against Miami and Texas A&M. They were getting blown off the line of scrimmage. Like, I don't know if I've ever seen a better resurgence of a defensive line than what we saw last year. So as much as we want to talk about the DJ Lagway effect, I really think it's about the defense. And I'm interested to see, obviously, Austin Armstrong moves on. Ron Roberts is the guy. But I think this team will go as far as the defense can carry them, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's why when Caleb Banks said he was coming back, I said, forget the portal or anything else. That might be the biggest pickup in the offseason is this guy didn't go to the draft.
Yeah, no, I think he was massive last year, obviously. But Pyburn leaving is disappointing to me because of his Gatordom. And I think that's the most distinct illustration of what college athletics is like now. It doesn't matter about allegiances. It's all about the paycheck and opportunities. So I do think that Florida's defense is going to be stout again, and love the fact that Caleb Banks decided to come back.
So you mentioned Jack Pyburn. He's going to LSU, and you and I were talking before we started recording about how good LSU could be because of what they did in the portal. They bring back Garrett Nussmeier. That Florida-LSU game week 3 for both teams seems just absolutely massive.
Isn't it weird, too, to think about playing LSU that early in the season and playing Tennessee that late in the year? I mean, as a Florida guy, I had to live through forever listening to Tennessee fans say, if we played you at the end of the year, we'd beat you, which they did in 2001 after the 9/11 rescheduled game. But it's going to be a different season this year. But I love what that game will kind of lay out for the rest of the year, how much that game is important. And with the elimination of the divisions, I think it makes that game even more elevated in level of importance.
What have you seen from Billy Napier? He's not in a very easy situation right now. Last year felt like he was kind of at the end of the road, and then he got the vote of confidence another year. Like, how do you think he's handling the pressure, but also maybe the second chance and having a chance to maybe seize that opportunity?
I think the thing that's crazy to me is maybe one of the biggest indictments is actually what saved his job, and that's the assistant coaches that he surrounded himself with. I think if there would have been somebody that they could have handed the job over to, that maybe they would have made a move and had an interim coach carry them the rest of the way. I'm glad they didn't. I love Billy Napier. I think he is a great guy. I think he's passionate about what he's doing. I do think there still needs to be some tweaks involved in terms of the coaching staff. But I think at the end of the day, man, this is a guy that loves being a Gator, and I think they've kind of welcomed being the underdog. Like, we're here to celebrate Florida's Final Four appearance. This is a team that has a bunch of chips on their shoulder, as Todd Golden talked about. And I feel like Florida's kind of the same way under Billy Napier, and I think he's embraced being that underdog in a way.
So we're running this on Monday. There will be an SEC team playing for the national title in basketball on Monday night. But you guys at the SEC Network are going to shift back to football very quickly. We talked a lot about Florida, but who else in the SEC are you really excited to see in terms of their evolution from last year to this year?
I mean, you and I talked about Auburn. Auburn's going to be an interesting team. You know, I think they fell way short of what we expected last year. I'm kind of excited about Texas A&M as well. I love – we were talking the other day about with Buzz moving on from College Station, I think it takes a very specific type of person to coach at Texas A&M and be successful. Mike Elko is that guy at Texas A&M, so I think it's a great fit there. You know, I'm interested to see what Oklahoma does. I don't know if there's a more hot seat in the SEC than Brent Venables. I think certainly, you know, Billy Napier could get hot if things don't go well early in the year, but I just the amount of pressure on these teams and on these coaches now is it's kind of crazy to think about. We haven't had the big mass exodus of coaches like we did a couple years ago.
I think it was interesting that you said is that in SEC football or just college football in general, year over year, it's different, right? Because of how many players are coming and going. And when you think about all the teams in the SEC that could be completely different than they were a year ago, Auburn, I think, is one that jumps out. But we ranked Auburn in the top 15, right? Already.
Yeah, because if some of those one possession games that didn't work out for them, if they're slightly better, they're winning those.
And then they got a lot better at positions that they were weak at last year. Oklahoma's another interesting one that you mentioned. And I'm wondering, like, last year, obviously the SEC had a down year, but, like, can you see if things come together, the SEC returning back to what it is?
When you say they had a down year, what it's funny.
Yeah, let's talk about it. You know, the metric is number of teams, in my opinion, that are actually built to compete at the highest level. That was down last year. Usually, like, the SEC always has a higher floor than everybody else. Their ceiling as a conference last year wasn't as high as it typically is.
Yeah, you know, I talked to Garth Glissman, the head of the SEC basketball operation, about what defining a successful season in basketball is. With all these teams we got in the tournament, he said it's all about championships. That's what Commissioner Sankey has talked about. And I think you go back to football, like, do you judge the competitiveness from top to bottom? I don't know if we've ever seen a deeper league than what we saw in football last year in the SEC. But at the same time, I don't think Tennessee ran into a buzzsaw with Ohio State, but I still don't think they have the line of scrimmage play that they need to have. I think they were exposed a little bit on the outside of the receiver position. But, you know, I think South Carolina's an interesting team. We talk about, you know, what they did at the end of the year, how would they have fared. When you have a quarterback, that gives you an opportunity to compete. And I think South Carolina's a team we probably need to talk about a little bit more than we have.
Yeah, Lenora Sellers is the other quarterback that I just cannot wait to see. How big of a jump does he make from year one as a starter to year two?
Are you concerned about anything with him as it relates to losing some of the momentum that he had? Like, because early in the season, I don't think he was great, but I thought he got a lot better, and I thought the pieces around him, the offensive line wasn't great. I had this disagreement with Coach a lot last year, but I do think that they've gotten a little bit better on the offensive line. But that Clemson game, he single-handedly won himself, despite the lack of protection.
All of us who play the video game are just waiting for Nick Harbour to become the player he is in the video game.
Isn't that? I feel bad for Nick Harbour in a way with the amount of pressure and expectation on him based upon his size and speed and everything else. Like, I do think that he'll take a big jump forward this year, though.
That catch against Alabama, I watched the condensed version of Alabama, South Carolina yesterday just to kind of refresh my memory. It's there. If he wants to tap into it, it's there.
And that's the thing. It's all about consistency. I mean, you know this, like, you can't have the peaks and the valleys. You got to have the consistency. And I think he's shown glimpses of what he can be, but he's got to play more consistently that way.
So, yeah, it's going to be a really good year. Any expectations on your side or talking points in the SEC that we're missing or that you have seen like a gap in the coverage of?
It's so wild, man. I've been so entrenched in this basketball run that Florida's been on the SEC for the entire season. I'll do a show on Friday about the spring games coming up on the weekend. Like, usually I'm getting ready to do spring games, and with everybody kind of shutting them down from the TV, it's like a totally different year.
SEC is just means more in basketball, too.
Well, it means less in spring games. See, this is from walk-on to walk-on. Like, Now, you became a star and didn't have to worry about this. But the spring game was where your Trey Killingsworths of the world, the Florida people from back in the day know what I'm talking about.
You know this, though, like the spring game, even if you're a walk-on or scholarship guy, the ability to prove that you're ready to play, to make a jump from being maybe a younger guy to being ready to be counted on. Spring games are the best, like, facsimile of what you're going to go through on a game day. And so I know that they'll do that, but, like, not having it televised, not having the hoopla around it, I think takes away a little of that experience.
It's less fun. I'm with Dion and Fran Brown. Let's figure out a way to have them play together.
I mean, though, doesn't that sound like it's going to get done based upon what they said is, hey, it's not enough time to let everybody else do it, but I guarantee next spring we're going to have those inter-squad games.
And we're going to be going to them, I think.
I can't wait. I can't wait.
And hopefully it'll get us back doing television during the spring because I feel so far removed from it that, it doesn't feel like a normal April.
That's because there's too many good basketball teams in the SEC. Let's be real here, Chris.
Probably that, too, which I'm okay with, man. And then we'll transition right into baseball with the SEC getting, 5 or 6 teams to Omaha as well.
We'll wedge you in between Shuda, Pat Bradley, and Ben McDonald, though.
I'm all right with that. Hey, it's so much fun to see. Like, I'll watch on Fridays and Saturdays in the SEC Network. They're all sitting in our same seats, but it's like they got great analysts after great analysts, and I commend the SEC Network for what they've done to accumulate talent.
You have to move the camera up because Ron Slay's so much taller than the rest of you.
Hey, nothing better than going out with Slay. Slay hosted us in Nashville, man. We had a great time. So love the talent we have.
We need that show where you all get together. Like, you get Ron Slay and Ben McDonald and you and Roman Harper, like all of you together.
So you missed it. We had that in a mini way down the Bahamas for Alyssa Lang's wedding last weekend. Roman Harper was there, Steffi Sorensen, Tori Vidalis. So we had a bunch of different analysts from different sports, and it was like a collision of all the world.
I'd like to see the SEC Network party.
Hey, hell yeah. I'll say this too. We also had Eli Drinkwitz just happened to be down at the Bahamas, so he came and met us too. Like a surprise wedding crasher.
Well, and I know, knowing Alyssa and her now husband Trey, they like to get after it. They also like to eat, so I'm hoping they had like a donut truck or something good.
Well, that's where you'll go ahead and make that connection. They're big foodies. But she said after the wedding, she goes, "Look, I've checked all the boxes. You can't get mad at me if I don't go out anymore." She's like the oldest 31-year-old there is. She wants to go to dinner at 5 o'clock and be in bed by 9 o'clock. I'm like, come on, Liz.
It's not that she's the oldest 31-year-old. It's that you are the youngest, and I'm not even going to say the number. Because I am younger than you by about 5 years, and I'm way older than you.
In my mind, I'm still 21. I'm 51 right now, but I got my son out here. I got my daughter's boyfriend, and we're gonna have a big weekend, man.
And well, to make sure you get some Whataburger on the way out of here, all right?
I need some Whataburger, and I need some water. If they can provide those things, I'll be in good shape.
Well, Chris Doering will be mixing in waters. Oh, we have a gift for you.
Oh, this is for
A
you.
commemorative Whataburger basketball.
That's amazing right there. Is this mine for real?
You get to
that's
keep
yours
that.
to take home.
Yeah.
All right. I love it. Hey, thank you, Whataburger. Thank you guys for having me.
Thanks for being here, man. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
That is Chris Doering, and not worried about DJ Lagway's shoulder, which he might be the only one, because it feels like everybody else in this town is worried about it.
Are you worried about it?
I went back and checked again, as one tends to do when one hears rumors and such, and nothing has changed on DJ Lagway's shoulder. Nothing has changed. The situation remains the same. They're resting it. He probably will begin throwing again early summer. And, I think if he's fully healthy, they're in good shape. It's only if it becomes a problem during the season that it's a problem. So if this keeps it from becoming a problem during the season.
What Chris said, Andy, is the importance of spring football being different for everybody, right? Like if you played a ton, obviously if you pay attention or cover a team, usually the veterans aren't necessarily as integrated in the contact drills and in the spring as some of the younger players. Like it's bigger. So like the question I guess I have for you is, where do you perceive DJ Lagway to be in his career? Did what he do while he played last year was that enough for you to feel like he doesn't even need to be in the contract stuff? Or the contact stuff, or do you think that like now?
He's a quarterback, so he's not going to be in contact stuff anyway.
No, but I just mean like involved in like high intensity reps where he's behind center.
Right.
They're not going to blow him up, but like for him,
I think
the rushing is an important like rep, and I just don't know where you are, where you think he is, or where you are on how important the spring would be for his personal development from a physical standpoint.
I think it wouldn't hurt. I mean, he was the starter for half a year. So, yes, you would want him to have a full offseason as the starter, getting all of the reps that you would expect that the starter to get during the offseason. So, that part of it is a concern. But I also went back and watched the condensed versions of Florida LSU and Florida Ole Miss last week. Producer River and I were hanging out waiting for you to get there. And it was jarring rewatching that, like seeing the difference between him and what they've had at quarterback for the last few years. And we also rewatched the Florida Tennessee game, which you rewatch that and you go, oh, if DJ Lagway starts that game, Florida probably wins that game because they probably they probably have one more score, whether it's a touchdown or a field goal early. Because remember, I think that game was scoreless at halftime. I think Florida would have scored some points in the first half had DJ Lagway been in there, and they may win that game. So I
think the entire story about Florida and DJ Lagway, and we might not get the answer to this, is the Georgia game. I think everything that Florida is looking for and everything that they want can be found in that game.
You mean where he got hurt and carted off in the first half?
Yeah, exactly. They were competitive with Georgia, and it felt like they were going to win even without him.
They were competitive with Georgia after he got hurt. Like that was the craziest part of that game.
Is if they would have had him for 4 quarters, I think they probably would have won that football game. And I think that is exactly where Florida has to be for them to be happy with Billy. And like I think that whole game right there is the epitome of what we're talking about, of what Florida could be, what it almost was a year ago, and what it might be this year. And if it's that this year in every game or in 10 of the 12, they're going to be in a pretty good position. So
exactly. And that's the thing. So what I'm told about the shoulder is that it's a rest situation. It's not a surgery situation, and that he will get back to throwing probably, within a couple of months. So if that's what happens, then they should feel good. If that timeline changes, then probably worry. So we'll just have to see what happens. But let's move from quarterbacks who will start in college next year to quarterbacks who may start in the NFL next year.
Yeah.
Our guy Dane Brugler at The Athletic reporting that Jalen Milroe has been invited to attend the NFL draft in Green Bay, which
has accepted.
That means has accepted an invitation. So that means first round green room. Now, here's the thing about the first round green room. The NFL does not want a Will Levis situation to happen ever again. They do not want somebody who's at the green room to be falling asleep because they're not getting picked in the first round. And the suggestion here is that if he has accepted this invitation, he feels very confident he's getting picked in the first round. And that the NFL is very confident that one of its teams will pick him in the first round.
Yes, that's kind of an interesting thing, because I think that we knew that he was going to probably play his way or test his way into a pretty high pick. I did not envision it being first round. And I'm wondering if that is a case of teams needing a quarterback and there not being a ton of options, or if this is a case of Jalen Milroe, who people view as like the reason Alabama didn't make the playoff last year, is a productive potential NFL starter, which is an interesting thought because, what's the number one criticism that people have with him? That he can't throw the intermediate pass and that he's not an accurate.
That one, and also that he'll walk his way into sacks.
So, like, to me, it's like, do you feel like that's something that can be fixed? We've seen quarterbacks become more accurate, but it's been rare. I think Josh Allen is the number one example of a player who wasn't terrible.
The only one?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, Jalen Hurts wasn't an elite level passer when he was at Bama, and now I think he's got one of the nicest. I mean, he throws passes in the NFL on a weekly basis that make my jaw drop. So, like, I don't know. I mean, Jalen get compared. Obviously, there's a lot of things to compare them with: their name, their school, where they're from.
They're both from Texas. Yeah.
I wonder if like this is a player that is as physically gifted as anybody who plays that position that GMs and scouts and coaches believe that they can, fine tooth comb, whatever you want to say, into a really good NFL quarterback. And I'm also wondering too, if the Jaden Daniels impact of it, which is a player who can run really, really well, is becoming again the more attractive, type of NFL quarterback prospect that teams need, and they feel like in the late first round that's a worthy, swing to take.
I'll throw another name out there though. Now, obviously, Jalen Milroe has a lot more college experience than Anthony Richardson did when the Colts took him at number 4. And Anthony Richardson was viewed as kind of a once-in-a-generation physical freak prospect, not necessarily because of what he did on the football field. It was his physical attributes just don't exist anywhere else, and that's why he got picked there. There's a little bit of that with Milroe because of his speed, because of his arm strength, and I think that's probably what's carrying the day here. But I would not pick any quarterback in the first round who isn't Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders. I'm just saying that right now. The fact that Jalen Milroe is going to the green room suggests that he's going in the first round. There may be another one too. It depends, because there's a lot of quarterback needy teams. Like, could this be the Steelers at 21? Could the Browns not take Shedeur and then take Milroe at 24?
Yeah. I saw a few mocks of like the Browns trading into 24 to take him there. I don't know. Like, it depends on, how bad you need a quarterback, but also too, like if you take somebody that you feel comfortable with it too, and you want to give up some draft capital to take a swing, like I think that's probably a better use of a draft pick than using him in the, with your only pick.
Yeah. And I want to point out, you were not comparing Jalen Milroe to Jaden Daniels. You were saying NFL teams may want a better running QB because Jaden Daniels showed you.
And I also think there needs to be a distinction made too on the type of runner that Cam Newton was. And Cam Newton had a lot of long breakaway explosive plays on the ground. I'm not saying that, but Cam Newton was a big physical pound on 4th and 2 type of guy. And the closest thing that we have to that in the NFL in terms of running at this point is Josh Allen, who's also a tremendous passer.
Jalen Hurts
too. I mean, do they do the tush push, but like, do they run Jalen Hurts like the way that they used to run Cam a lot? I don't know. I mean, maybe.
Yes, Jalen Hurts is one of their main options on 3rd and 4th and short.
Yeah.
And but that, because he's built for that.
Like, but I'm wondering, like, if Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels type of elusiveness and speed is the more attractive running option at quarterback than it is the big, bulky, pound him.
Right. And Jalen Milroe is actually sort of splitting the difference between those two, because Milroe's not slight like Lamar and Jaden are. He's not the power lifter that Jalen Hurts is. I mean,
if the video game is any indication, he's Cam Newton, Michael Vick, and Jaden Daniels all in one. So I don't like, he's the most lethal player in the NCAA video game, and every time I play Alabama online, I just die a little inside because I know what's coming. The only quarterback where we're spying him and edging out the rushers to contain him doesn't work, and it's impossible to sack. But like I don't know. Like, the thing is, like, Jalen Milroe has been the target of a lot of crap, right? And like I think that it's gotten so intense. And mainly from Alabama fans who are probably upset with the way that the season went, that we've like convinced ourselves that he stinks. And like, I think that's like,
I don't think he stinks, but there's a lot of stuff that he did in college that would give me pause if I was an NFL GM. Like, and it's not just the inaccuracy on the mid-range stuff. It's more the creating sacks that didn't necessarily have to be sacks. Taking your eyes, letting your eyes drop. Walking into a pass rush when if you have good pocket awareness, you're sliding away from it. That's what I'm more worried about, because he's not going to have as good of an offensive line wherever he goes in the NFL as he had at Alabama relative to the competition. You're going to deal with really nasty pockets. And if you can't,
how much do you think that's something you can fix though? Like, that's the thing. Like, I don't know.
I don't think you can fix it.
No.
I think that's just that sort of sixth sense thing that the really good quarterbacks, especially the drop back guys that aren't fast, but you see that they can kind of sense pressure and move. You're born with that.
Yeah, because he's got a really pretty deep ball. I feel like between the elusiveness and the ability to hit people deep, like if you're able to, work with him and improve his patience and improve his tendencies in dirty pockets, that maybe you might find something there. I don't know, but I think that the NFL will always take whatever quarterbacks are there, even if it's a bad year or a down year.
Let me throw some options at you. So I'm going to let you be the GM. So let's say the Steelers and Aaron Rodgers can't come to any sort of agreement and they need a starter for this year. Or like you were talking about, the Browns decide they don't want to go with Shador really high and they're going to trade and try to get somebody lower in the first round. Jalen Milroe or Jackson Dart? Who would you take?
I'd probably take Jackson Dart.
I would too. Jalen Milroe or Tyler Shook? Who would you take?
Jalen Milroe. Tyler's always injured.
It's a toss-up for me too, because I have issues with either one. Jalen Milroe or Quinn Ewers?
Jalen Milroe.
Because of Ewers' injury history?
Ewers is injured every year. And I think that he was a good player. I don't know if I view him as you also know who I am as a person, and I'm willing to roll the dice against the crap board a little bit more than maybe you can and I feel like the upside, I think that Quinn Ewers probably has a smaller or a higher floor. But I don't know.
But Milroe has a higher ceiling.
And I think I might go with the ceiling guy with no injury issues.
Can I throw one more at you? And this is a guy that is not going to be a first round prospect, but he's going to get drafted at some point in this draft. Jalen Milroe or Kyle McCord?
Probably Jalen Milroe.
Okay. I'm very interested in Kyle McCord because I'm trying to figure out who could be the guy who gets drafted 4th, 5th round, 6th round, who might actually wind up being an NFL starter. He seems like, if we're going to pick candidates for that, he seems like the candidate to me.
How many? I don't know the answer to this, and I'm not sure you do off the top of your head, but you're the encyclopedia of just random information. How many quarterbacks in the NFL are starting right now that were 5th round, like after the 3rd round?
Dak and Brock Purdy.
Those are the only two I can think of.
But we remember them because they are.
Because they're good. Yeah. But I don't know how common that is. That's the thing too. The really, really good NFL teams are the ones who take players in the 4th, 5th, and 6th round who end up being productive starters for multiple years. And if I were an NFL GM, I would probably be less into the notion of taking a quarterback in the 5th round because A, it's rare. And B, you can get really good, solid players at key positions in those rounds that are undervalued that actually can contribute to your team.
Well, I would take him. I would take that 4th, 5th. If I had a good starter, that's where I'd take the 4th or 5th round or 6th round quarterback that I thought had a chance to be something, because I might be able to develop him into something that could replace my guy when he retires, or that could be a trade chip later. I would look at it sort of like your college coaches who take a quarterback every year, and then some years they don't take the most highly rated guy because they've already got a highly rated guy and they don't want to scare off the highly rated guy, but then the guy you took for depth winds up being your starter. Really Mac Jones is an example of that. Mac Jones was actually the 2nd QB in his class. Tua was the other one. So I think that's the sort of thing you want to do when you do that lower round quarterback. It's when you already have a quarterback.
Or if you're a team that doesn't have a quarterback at all that wants an extra option in training camp, because that's the other thing too. It's the more, even if one's more of a long shot, like the poker expression, you want to chip in a chair. If I were the Browns, I would take a quarterback with my 2nd pick, and then I might consider somebody like that in the 5th or 6th round, like
a Kyle McCord or a Dylan Gabriel or somebody like that.
Right. That might have a chance to be really, really good. I also think too, and I don't know, you tell me about this, but it's just the NFL seems so situational. I think that there's so many what if game. I feel like I will say this, if Tim Couch got drafted to a really good franchise, I think he could have had a completely different NFL career. And I think part of the reason why Brock Purdy is so good is because he's at a functional place that knows how to call offense and play to their quarterback strengths. So the players that go to Cleveland always get always get their heads bashed in because they're never in the right system and they don't do a good job of harboring and developing those guys. So like if you're a team that has a quarterback, like, I don't know, like even like the Lions or something that is just like, you have your guy, you probably have a guy for 3 or 4 more years. You have a lot of young players and you need a backup. Like you bring him in and then all of a sudden he opens your eyes. But like I look at like Brock Purdy, it's like, I don't even know why they took him to begin with. Like,
well, Brock Purdy, and here's where people missed on Brock Purdy. Like Brock Purdy raised the level of play at Iowa State for 4 years.
Yeah.
Like he made them better despite the fact that they had inferior talent to most of the teams they played. And he made them the better team in most cases. So like that matters. And it's we don't usually get to see that happen in college because the guys that are capable of doing that are usually on the teams that have more talent.
Yeah. And then also too, there's a big deal of like, and this might be a thing that actually plays into McCord in Ewer's favor. And even maybe Dylan Gabriel to the same extent, but like quarterbacks who played a lot of games tend to be more ready to compete at a high level in the NFL. Whereas, guys who were a starter for a year and a half, sometimes struggle a little bit. Like Dylan Gabriel played more snaps than all these guys, maybe a few of them combined. Right. So, like I think that it's an interesting thing, but like when you start talking about 5th and 6th round quarterbacks in a draft where there aren't a lot of like surefire first rounders, it's like, where would these guys be in a normal draft? Like undrafted guys? Like it just
right. But here's the problem is I'm having problems picking between Jalen Milroe and some of these guys, and we're talking about them as 6th rounders. Like this suggests he's gonna be a first rounder, and I like what Dave's here says in the chat. Just by picking a 3rd round QB in the 1st round doesn't make him better.
Yeah,
like that's a good point. Like just because you need a quarterback doesn't mean you should overreach for that quarterback.
Yeah. Also,
you should take him where you think he's going to fall because why waste a high draft pick on him?
Notion again of like what Greg McElroy said last week of like, just because somebody's super talented doesn't mean they're good at football, and Jalen Milroe, I think, was a better college quarterback than Anthony Richardson. Is that a fair thing to say?
Oh, very fair. Jalen Milroe was a much better college quarterback than Anthony Richardson.
And I also the thing with Jalen Milroe is that we all have this sour taste in our mouth about him. And I think it's part of the reason why he's being negged as much as he's being negged. But I don't think that he is a lost cause as a player. And I also do wonder too, like if they would have beaten Oklahoma, like where would we be talking about him since the beginning of this process?
Well, if he'd have opted out of the Outback Bowl, we'd have a nicer conversation about him.
Like I feel like we're looking at 1 or 2 games, but like how many previews have we done?
I'm not looking, but I watched every Jalen Milroe start, Ari.
I know, but I'm saying like
I'm not talking about just 1 or 2 games. Here's the thing, like
the tenor of the conversation around him. We spent 5, 6, 7 previews on Alabama this past year talking about how much of a weapon he is, and now he sucks. Which one is it?
Go back to the Arkansas game in 2023 and just watch him step into those Landon Jackson sacks. Like,
yeah,
I can't unsee that.
Yeah, and I think that that's fair too. And like the thing too is, if collecting cards has taught me anything, it's that it's very, very hard to not fall in love with people who do great things in college and then think that like Justin Fields is always going to be the person that I look to as like the biggest blunder of my collecting, because I spent a ton of money on him as a prospect, and it turned out that he didn't turn out to be that good. And I wonder, like, I go back and I think about it, it's like, well, he was incredibly gifted from a physical standpoint. He was the heart and soul of a team that he started for multiple years. He took them to the highest possible place out, into the national.
But he was also surrounded by more talent than everyone else, and that's the hardest part, I think, when you're judging these quarterbacks, because like I can't blame what Jalen Milroe, the issues he had on his offensive line. His offensive line was good.
Yeah,
his receivers were good. His backs were good.
To put a bow on the Justin Fields point, though, is that like everything that you would want to see, you saw out of him. And he even like completed 15 out of 16 passes in the Clemson Fiesta Bowl game where he outperformed Trevor Lawrence on national television. And then like all of a sudden it's like, well, he can't scan and read defenses and just misses guys who are open and doesn't throw it enough. And it's like, well, that's how he's become this like run first guy in the NFL, and he's going to have another shot. And I don't know that all my hope is gone that he could be a productive NFL quarterback, but it's like, then all of a sudden Brock Purdy, who's in the same draft or the draft after him, I should say, Gets drafted in the last pick. You don't think twice about it. And then he's like a starter for a Super Bowl team. Like it's really, really hard to see coming. And I honestly, and I talked to a good buddy of mine who's an NFL scout, and he goes, a lot of times we are just taking swings in the dark the way that you guys do, because it's really, really hard to tell which ones are actually going to be good. I mean, think about it. This is the thing that blows my mind, even with collecting. It's like I'm looking at this card that's just sitting on my desk that I'm shipping out today. It's just Trey Benson, right? This card's like $5 maybe. And like Trey Benson was a very good college running back. And like he might be a pretty good NFL, but he's never going to be an NFL star. And you think about how many really, really, really good college players there are. How many players fill our show? I mean, like Malachi Corley was a guy that we talked about a lot, and he hasn't even played for the Jets yet. How many great players in college that we become enamored with never even sniff playing time in the league? And then the ones that actually do sniff playing time or get good sometimes come out of nowhere. And like the secret sauce of how to identify that with a quarterback is fascinating to me, especially considering the fact that Brock Purdy got taken by who we believe is the greatest quarterback coach on the history of the league, or at least of the last 5 years.
And he had the talent around him.
And the only reason why he's playing is because the player that same person drafted in the first round busted out. Like, we don't talk about that. Like, he is the guy. Shanahan's the guy that we're supposed to trust. And he got it wrong.
They would have 2 Super Bowls if they drafted Brock Purdy where they did and not drafted Trey Lance, because Micah Parsons would be on their team right now.
Can you imagine?
Like, it's crazy.
And he got it wrong.
It's crazy. I'm glad you brought this up, because here's what I want to do later in the week, Ari, because it is hard. But I want to go through these guys that are supposed to be picked day 3 and beyond, or maybe even late second round and beyond, and find the guys that are going to be the Brock Purdys and the Puka Nakuas that were like, yeah, we knew they were good in college. Why are you surprised that they're so good in the NFL? Because I think there's a few guys like that. So let's make that a show later this week. The diamonds in the rough who aren't in the rough, because we've been watching them for 4 years. Yeah,
I want to look at like 7-round mocks online and see if there's like guys who are like, oh wow, that guy's in the 7th round. Oh, that guy's in the 5th round. That would be good. And like I hope we start the show with I'm trying to think of like who.
Xavier Restrepo.
Well, I don't know that he's a diamond in the rough, because he's still a 2nd round pick, right?
Xavier Restrepo,
or a 3rd round pick.
He may not get drafted.
Did it get? He got. We never talked about this, but
we did talk about this on the show. No, we did.
We talked about it on the show before he tweeted what he said happened.
Yeah, but everybody knows that wasn't true.
Okay.
So.
Okay. I was going to ask you if you think that like helps like calm your mind a little bit about it, but like,
my mind is calm. He's going to be a good receiver in the NFL. I don't care what he ran in the 40.
Oh, I didn't realize that people think he's going undrafted now. Holy crap.
Yeah.
I know we heard of
no. Yeah. So it's
one
of those things.
Xavier Restrepo.
Exactly. Well, we could do Willie Lampkin, the center at North Carolina, who's 5'10", 270.
Yeah.
That one I'm not sure about, because 5'10", 270 is very small for an NFL offensive lineman. But I've got a few. I've already started making my list. I've got a few guys, because there are a few of those measurables and workout wonders that are really, we're seeing in a lot of the first round mocks. And I'm like, let me name you these 3 players who are better at doing the thing that person does on the football field.
Yeah. I just saw that Luke Lachey, the Iowa tight end, is a 5th round projected pick. I'd take that guy.
Put him on the list. Put him on the list, Ari.
And I actually have hung my blinds, but one fell. Somebody asked, and like the settings of my camera are off, and we need to fix them because we were outside, and I don't know.
Yeah, we'll get it all fixed.
We're gonna be good. It looks a little hazy to me, and it's been bothering me the entire show. But I think it's more because the settings are off than all those things. And no, I don't know how to use a level.
There's actually a level in your tripod. There's a little bubble you got to get in the middle.
Ask River. You can bring him back up here. He'll have my back. He was messing with my tripod. He said it was the most complex, unbelievably weird tripod he's ever dealt with.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a direct quote.
You took the feet off your tripod. That's why.
What feet?
Or I bet you didn't put the feet on. You probably never put the feet on. You probably didn't even notice it in the box.
I don't even know what you're talking about, dude.
Tripods come with feet. You screw them on. Makes them easier to level.
I never bought. This was given to me already set up. I never put this together, so I don't know where this came from. You
see what we're dealing with everywhere, folks. All right,
we'll get you right, Ari.
National championship game tonight. We'll be back in the morning to break down everything that happened, and we will talk about a new national champion in college basketball, either the Florida Gators or the Houston Cougars. Talk to you tomorrow.